Hello, everyone. This is Brian Powell. I'm the Director of Athletics Advancement at Notre Dame. I'm going to give us just a few moments here as the system allows people to join the webinar, and we'll get going. Thank you for joining today. So I think our participants are gathering. I just want to welcome the group and then turn it over to our special alumnus MC, Ron Markezich. But I want to start with a word of thanks. We do these to keep the program alumni connected to what's going on, all the exciting things that are happening. Obviously, at this point in the season, it's a really neat time to talk, having just wrapped up the ACC indoors and so much in front of us. And also to say thank you for your support of the program. Many of you on here are contributing to the Rocky Athletics Fund, have started endowed scholarships, have included Notre Dame in your estate. So many things that help make us who we are and who we will be on into the future. And so thank you for all those things. I want to introduce you to Ron Markezich, a guy that has many hats as it relates to the program. So Ron's a 1989 grad and ran here for the program. He's out on the West Coast. I think he joined Microsoft in 1998, if that sounds right, Ron, and has risen through the ranks to be an executive there. He's had some kids who have become really good runners, and we're fortunate for some of that to be benefiting Notre Dame here. And so he's got the parent hat on as well. And he's also been a great supporter of the program through his annual contributions and helping us with Harris Family Track and Field Stadium. And so, Ron, you're a great guy to host this with all those angles. I want to say thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our coaches and run the show today. So we appreciate you.
Great. Thanks, Brian, and honored to host this with Coach Sparks and Coach Carlson and a bunch of alumni and others on the call. We got some great questions from people that were sent in, and I'm going to kind of launch into those. But before that, I thought it would be great if Coach Sparks, Coach Carlson just gave a little bit of their background. It's really incredible to see the progress with the program in a remarkably short period of time. So if Coach Carlson, if we could just start with you and just give a little bit of your background, how you ended up in the role you're at, and then turn it over to Coach Sparks, and then we'll launch into some questions.
So I've been at Notre Dame, I can't remember, it's 10 or 11 years now. But Joe Piane, which everyone on this call knows, he's the one that originally hired me. And then under Joe, he gave me the 800 guys. And then under Alan, the head coach that preceded him, I got the 800 men and women, and then under Sparks, I've gotten the men's distance. So my role here has grown over time, and I am certainly bulletproof. I've made it through 3 head coaches, yeah, no, it's been a really fun journey. The last 5 years, especially with the men's distance, has just been a really cool opportunity to work with some really good kids, and you know, they've made me look a lot better than I am.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, this is my middle of my 8th year, which is hard to believe. So my first 4 years, I was assistant to Coach Turner, working with primarily the women, and halfway through that tenure, turned over the men to Sean. And the last 3.5 years, I guess, as the director of the program. Prior to that, I was at Southern Illinois for 12 years as the men's and women's cross country coach. 2 years, from 2000 to 2002, I was the women's cross country coach at Ohio State. And then I was just down the road in Bloomington, Indiana for 8 years, undergraduate and graduate school, and volunteering, you know, working my way into the coaching ranks during the 90s when I guess a lot of you guys were probably competing.
Great, thanks. We're both fortunate to have both of you here at Notre Dame. Let's start. Cross country seems like ages ago. National meet was less than 4 months ago, but why don't we just do a recap of the men's and women's cross country season, and then we'll kind of jump forward to indoor and outdoor.
Yeah, I'll lead off here and let Sean clean up on the men's. I think it's a tale of 2 teams coming into the season, but I'll kind of highlight where the women were. And you know, Ron was front and center for a lot of that, where we were much of the regular season. The women's team was a bubble team just to qualify to the national meet, but we knew, at least I knew, and I think the ladies eventually figured out, that we had the talent to be much better than a barely top 30 team. But I think the key to our end of the season success, what saw us win the regional meet and finish 5th and, you know, 20, 30 points out of 4th, was our confidence, our fitness found each other. I think I was confident all along. So there were some frustrating talks with the team in October when we weren't racing the way we were maybe training. But I think some of that fitness got up with us, a little bit longer than I thought it would have, 3 or 4 weeks. Traditionally, in my mind, whatever you do in a training session, you won't see that on the course for another 2 weeks. And it just caught up with us maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. So the conference meet, we were 5th. And 4 weeks later, we were 5th in the country. It's kind of a unique situation to be in. And was talking with some of the girls the other day. Our Maddie Denner was 9th in the country, and I think she was, somewhere in the 60s at our home cross country invitational, 50s and 60s. And Olivia was 11th at the national meet and was 79th at our home cross country meet on October 1st. So there was a lot of people try to give me credit for what happened on November 20th at the national meet, but it was like poor coaching in October, and we figured some things out in November, but it all came together at the right time, which is obviously the most important thing.
I'll just comment on that Notre Dame Invitational, that home meet. I rode the golf cart with Coach Sparks. I don't think I'll do that again, because all I heard was, I don't think we could run any worse than this. I thought the worst we would get was 6th, and we were 11th. And so it was quite an extreme season from that point to the end of the season. It's quite a scene to see all the girls come up and embrace Coach Sparks after NCAAs in Florida State.
I'm thinking about training, for next year, and I always, Carlson will tell you, I'm the ultimate procrastinator, and I procrastinate even in our X's and O's of running fast. We always hit it at the right moment, even when it's with peaking for training and thinking about what we're going to do next fall. We're just going to, I think, push the training calendar up a couple weeks so we can be at least more competitive at the ACC meet. I know it's frustrating, as Ron was in that cart with me when we're 11th at our home invitational, but if we're great on October 1st, then we're probably not going to be very good November 20th, is sort of the general theme of at least the way my X's and O's are going to work. So I'd rather, I don't want to be 11th, but I'd rather, have some growth in October 1st till building into conference, and make sure we're successful in November.
Thanks. Coach Carlson, how about you? Last year was a unique year because you actually had 2 NCAA cross country meets in the same calendar year, which hopefully will be the first and last time that ever happened. So love your recap.
Yeah. So coming into this year, we returned a pretty good team from last. We were 2nd last year with 6 All-Americans, and so we certainly had some high expectations. We coming into the championship season, we won our conference meet pretty handedly with 32 points, and I think we put 8 in the top 20. So that was a fun day. And then going into the regional meet, we basically just ran that regional meet as a pack, and we won that pretty handedly. We scored like 37 points. So going into nationals, we had some pretty high expectations for the guys. But going into nationals, we also had a couple guys get a little bit sick at the wrong time. So Yara Nagoose and Josh Methner are 2 of our pretty key players in our national meet performance. We're a little bit under the weather. And we went out to win the meet. And had we maybe run a little bit more conservative of a race and ran for maybe 4th or 5th place, I think we probably would have had a better opportunity to be that. But we went out running to win, and I don't know that I could have convinced the guys of anything else after having been 2nd last year. And we paid for that a little bit the last couple K of the cross country national meet. The good news is you would have thought my closest relative had died the day of the national meet, and we were 9th. So when that's become the expectation of our program, where we're kind of expecting a podium finish every time we go to cross country nationals, we're probably in a pretty good spot. If 9th is about as bad a day as we could possibly have.
Thanks, Sean. That's a good update. And it is amazing at that level, the margin of error is nil. You have 5 guys run 5-10 seconds slower than usual, and you slip many places. It's very little margin for error. Hey, exciting indoor season so far. You've seen actually a national record, NCAA record from Notre Dame, many school records. Can you, Sean, maybe start with you, give us a little recap of the indoor season.
Yeah, indoors have been great for us. We've got, we ran 9:22 or 21, I can't even remember, in the DMR, which is the school record and second fastest time in NCAA right now. I think it's fourth all time. And they'll be competing at nationals next week. We ran a kind of a skeleton crew of that at conference, thinking we would still have a pretty easy win. And with about 80 meters to go, Yard looked back on his inside. If you look back on your outside, usually you fade, you swing wide a little bit, you fade out. He looked back on his inside to see how much room he had. Well, he hit the rail and went down, got up, and still finished second and still ran 4 flat, but we ended up taking second in the DMR of the conference meet. And then we went 1-2 in the conference meet in the 5K with Matthew Carmody and Josh Methner, both guys who have more eligibility, which is exciting. And then both of them earlier that season had broke the previous school record in the 5K. So Matthew Carmody ran 13:27 and Josh Methner ran 13:32. And then Dylan Jacobs had run 13:14 in that same meet, which sits number 2 in the nation right now. That's number 4 all time ever in NCAA. And it is the fastest American collegiate. So right now, our group holds the fastest American collegiate DMR, the fastest American collegiate 3K, and the fastest American collegiate 5K ever in NCAA history. And then Dylan Jacobs went on to win the 3K at the conference meet, which was really exciting because a couple of the guys in that race are going to be competing for national title, I think, in a couple weeks here. And so Dylan should be in a pretty good spot going into NCAAs. And then last, our 800 group, we put 15 points on the board there. We went 2, 4, 7. And most of those guys will be running our DMR here at nationals in 2 weeks. But overall, just a really, really good indoor season. I mean, we broke every school record besides the 800 in the distances on the men's side. So yeah, the boys have got some momentum, a little bit of revenge tour from cross country, and hopefully we can keep that rolling into NCAAs and outdoors.
And you have, if you look at seedings for NCAAs, you've got either number 1 or number 2 seed in the 5K, 3K, and DMR, which is impressive.
Yeah.
Awesome. Coach Sparks.
Yeah. The other cool stat, I'll hop on there too. Men's shot put broke a 50-year-old school record. Michael Schoaf broke the shot put record. I think he actually did it twice, back-to-back meets. So that was a big, it's the longest standing indoor school record on the books that was broken. 50 years, 1972. So that's awesome. quite a span there. I'll let Sean answer the question we got in the chat, because he's talked to quite a few people about the BU track, and we took a couple women there in December. Maddie Denner ran 15:27 for 5K, which is the second fastest in school history after she just finished 9th a couple weeks before that. But I think the one that probably caught a lot of people's eye, if you look deeper, was Lauren Bailey, who was 60s at the in-state cross country meet, ran 15:45, and she just missed qualifying to the national meet on the Boston track. And then Sean took Yared and those guys in the 5K. And I know he talks to a lot of the professional runners, the Bowerman group, Jerry Schumacher, about the Boston track. And I don't know, what are some things people mentioned about that track to you as you were spent some time on it, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed when we got there, I was watching scrubs break 4 minutes a mile, and I was like, what's going on at this track? When you watch people land, you see the track bounce back. The track literally has a bounce to it. I mean, I guess that's just the easiest way to put it. And so you got, the environment, I think, of everybody goes there to run fast. So you're running against good kids. So like the heat that Dylan was in was a completely pro field. and he beat everybody besides Bowerman guys in it. I think the shoes have certainly helped a little bit there. The expectations have just been raised, but I mean, and that went a lot into the planning of our season too. So the Mayo invite was the week before the BU Valentine Invitational, and so I had to make some hard decisions. So we always want to represent ourselves well at our own meets. But at the same time, I want to give our guys a fair shot of setting collegiate records and qualifying for NCAAs and setting, program records. And I just thought that was our best opportunity from a competition standpoint and from a standpoint of just, it's just blatantly the fastest track in the NCAA right now that's legal. And so we wanted to take advantage of that. So, but yeah, there is definitely something to that track. I've talked to Jerry a lot about it, and he said, when they run indoors, so the Bowerman group, they don't run anywhere indoors unless it's there, because it's just not worth going anywhere else, really.
To comment a little bit on that, when we're at Virginia Tech this weekend, or if you go to Clemson or even Michigan and see their 200-meter bank tracks, they're hydraulic, which means they come up and down, versus the BU track is a permanently banked structure. And with that, when you watch on the hydraulic tracks, they're just solid. They don't give that bounce that Sean mentioned that the BU track has. I think it's honestly the other tracks are more professionally built, where BU is probably built on a budget, and as a result, it's a little bit softer and gives that bounce back that I think that everybody has found. And I think BU probably funds their entire track budget on the $75 per entry per person to race on that track, about every other weekend. So they're bringing in the money.
What you're seeing now too is most people have built these bank tracks out of aluminum, and BU it's built out of wood. New Balance just spent $250 million on a brand new indoor 200 bank track, and they're using wood. Why? Because I think they're trying to replicate a little bit of that BU track.
That's good insight. The BU track, when you see it, that first lane looks really worn down too. It doesn't look like a high budget facility. So that's good insight for you. And by the way, that was Dave Worth, who's one of our still in our top 10 list for the 1,000 meters indoors. So
we don't go after the K much anymore, so I think you'll be safe.
Safe for a while. I don't even know if they run the K in the BU meet. So Dave, you can take a deep sigh of relief there. Quick outdoor, real interest from people on where they could see a meet. Is there going to be a home meet at Notre Dame this year, or where's ACC's at?
Yeah, so won't have the home meet. We hosted a home meet last year. We're going to take the year off this year of hosting and try to do a better job marketing that meet at an earlier time as far as getting teams to come. Trying to get some energy going the week before the ACC championship of having that meet on our schedule. ACC outdoor meet is going to be at Duke. They're in Durham. That's going to be May 12th through 14th. So for Notre Dame kids, so it's graduation weekend. So if you got any parents on here, we're working to get the kids back on Saturday night so we can hit up the graduation on Sunday.
Awesome.
But as far as scheduling goes, we talk about that daily. I think and that's the hard part as a director, the head coach, is try to give each coach what they need for their different groups. And every coach has a different philosophy, and every coach has a different culture they established within their program. So the first big meet that I think the majority of the team, even the sprinters, jumpers, are going to attend, and a few of the throwers are going to go to Texas relays, but a majority of the group will go to the Riley relays 2 weeks after the NCAA meet on March 23rd. March 25th, 26th weekend. And as Coach Carlson and I, as distance coaches, we try to compete every other weekend on a more elite level. So for the men, or for the women, it's Riley relays, and we go to Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, and then we're going to go to Bloomington for a meet on a Friday night, qualifying type thing under the lights. They host the NCAA regional meet at IU this year, And then we'll maybe send a relay or two to either Drake or Penn. And of course, conference meet is usually a good meet to try to hit a regional qualifying mark in as well. The throwers will follow a pretty similar schedule to that, throwers and the sprinters, but Sean's got a few meets on the West Coast in mind that he's working towards.
Great, thanks. And I'll ask this one now because it's a common question. Track reunion. What are the plans for the next track reunion?
Yeah, so
alumni want to know.
I'd like to think we're moving on from COVID, but not being 100% sure, and the university won't commit to anything as far as what next January, February might look like. So right now we're looking at January or September 16th, 17th. So there's the National Catholic Cross Country race on that Friday. There's a football game on Saturday. So we will have something that Friday and maybe probably a tailgate on Saturday before the game as well. So some kind of dinner get together after the cross country meet on Friday night. But it's September 16th and 17th.
Oh, just 6 months from now then, this year.
So you can, so 6 months
Awesome.
from now, start planning. I think we play Cal maybe that night. So decent game, hopefully. Sean,
Okay.
what's your track schedule look like? To share with some of them that you're looking at.
Yeah, so we're trying to pin down some things. As the good news is we have some guys trying to do some really unique things. The hard part is finding meets that run fast enough for our guys right now. I think we've got a couple of guys that can run 28 minutes for 10K or under, multiple guys, and finding a race to do that. We might have to go to either Brian Clay on the West Coast or a Stanford invite on the West Coast. And then should Yard return here for next semester, which is the plan right now, we're trying to go and lower his collegiate record in the 1500. Right now it's at 334. We'd like to get it to a point where people won't touch it for a while. And so to find a race that runs 330 for 1500 meters is that doesn't happen on US soil often, but we're going to hopefully get a couple pro groups in on it and try and get after it. And so we're looking probably that will be on the West Coast also, just for weather purposes and things like that, but it'll be probably the week or two before the conference meet. Yard's got a heavy load during the indoor season, and so we try not to race him until later in the outdoor season so he can kind of reset and stay healthy and get some training in. But we'll run a couple of our guys at rally relays and some steeples and 10Ks, and then but the majority of maybe the more elite performances are going to come later that spring. The probably 3 weeks going into the conference meet-ish.
You mentioned Drake and Penn relays, and we have a few members of the school record 4x800 team here. Jim Tyler, I know, is on here. I know Robert Noble sent in a question ahead of time. Don't know if Robert's on here, but are you ever going to go after that 4x8 record? This seems like that would be a great year to take down Tyler's record. That's probably, I think it was from 1985.
Yeah, we're going to go all in on it this year at Penn Relays. So we'll probably run Sam Bowles, who's run 145 in the 8 outdoors. Yard will most likely run on that, who can be probably right around Sam's split. And then we've got 2 guys that have both run 148 indoors. And so I think we should have a fairly legitimate opportunity to break that school record. And then we were looking up the Penn Relays record for the 4x8 also. I think we have a pretty legitimate shot at that also. So that'd be kind of a cool one.
That would be cool. Who's on that 4x8 then? You'd have Sam. Would Yard be on the 4x8 as well, or would you?
Yeah, so Sam, Yared, Bashir, Masvello, he's a transfer in from Virginia Tech, grad school transfer, 5th year. And then a guy by the name of Tim Zeft, he was 4th at the indoor conference meet in the 8. And we've got some really big bodies in the 800, and the outdoor track I think will favor them a little bit more. If you've seen Sam, he's 6'5", and it's just hard for him to move on an indoor track a little bit. But I think a lot of these guys will will like being on 100-meter straightaways.
Yeah, watching Sam was painful in that 200-meter fake track, trying to get around guys in that. So it's great to see Robert Noble's on there too, another member of that 4x8 team. I remember that Drake relays when they won the 4x8. And Piane, I think he held onto that trophy for probably 72 hours. He probably slept with it. He was at the lobby of the hotel we were staying at Holden Court with this Drake Relays 4x8 trophy. So it was definitely a highlight for him. Speaking of highlights, I know everyone's thrilled to see Molly Seidel in the Olympics this year. Matt, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Molly? She's spoken a lot after that about how you saved her career and saved her from retiring from running, and credit you a lot for that bronze medal. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, people ask occasionally about, what's the culture of your program, or what are your coaching philosophies? And a lot of who I've evolved to be over the last 7 or 8 years here is a testament to just seeing what allowed Molly to be successful and tweaking things since then and with her. So Molly and I spoke probably every 3 or 4 weeks before the Olympic trials, and then probably every 3 or 4 weeks after the Olympics. And as you can imagine, Molly now is gotten pretty busy. She's a superstar now, so we don't chat as much. We probably talk every couple months now. I think about the culture of the program and the way it allowed her just to be herself. And that's something I've carried forward since she's moved away. We've got a lot of characters within the women's distance group, and they're all unique, and we just kind of let them be who they are. I think, people ask about what are the keys to your success of especially the women's side of things. It's that component, and that we've got a lot of people going different directions as far as mileage goes. We've got girls that run 20 miles a week and girls that run 100 miles a week. Some of them will run recovery runs at 6:20 pace. Some run recovery runs at 8:20 pace. It's what the key element to all of this is. We're going to do what makes you feel confident and feel good about yourself. And I took that away from Molly 6 years ago, and still talking to Molly today is what she does is what makes her happy. And when she's happy, she runs fast. And so I think that's a big piece to the success the women have had the last couple months here as well, is letting them find out who they are. And that's, I guess, when you come to college, that's what you're supposed to do anyway. So we just kind of try to nurture that along. And like I said, Molly was a big piece of that. And she's certainly, if you follow her on social media or listen to her interviews, there's nobody out there, I think, in the professional world that is a bit more open with everything that they are than Molly right now. And I think that's a big piece to her continued success, is Molly's just going to be Molly and say what's on her mind. And she's raised well. She was educated well, but she also is very appropriate in everything she says. But it's also very much just who she is. She's not going to hold things back. She'll share all her training philosophies and life philosophies with you.
She is fun to watch on social media. She is one of the more real ones out there, and does a great job giving you inside scoop of professional runner. I could also, one of the things she shared was a talk you had with her. I think it was after indoor nationals, where she ran well, but not amazing. And you basically said, hey, Molly, you're a lot better than that. I'm not mad at you, but you could do a lot more. And I know firsthand, you had that same talk with my daughter. I don't know if you remember, after ACC's her sophomore year in cross country, she was the last person in for all ACC. I think she was pretty satisfied with that.
21st, yeah.
Yeah, you had that talk with her, as you could be a lot better. And she certainly, I think that was a pivot point in her career. Hey, Sean, can you talk a little bit about Yard? It's amazing to see Yard make the Olympic team. I know it must have been super disappointing to have an injury keep him out of the actual Olympic races, but talk a little bit about what happened and how he approached that, his attitude through that, because that was also super impressive with how he handled that situation.
Yeah, so going into the Olympics, well, the trials obviously went really well. He was doing some stuff I've never seen anybody do, and probably never will again. And then going into the Olympics, he was taking some classes here for grad school that started in the summer. And before we were leaving for the Olympics, he had, I think, like 3 finals the day before we left for Tokyo and packing and all that. And so by the time we got to Tokyo, I think he was a little bit more fried than I had anticipated. And we had done a workout, and he pulled up on one of the reps with his quad had basically, the long story short is he tore his quad. And we didn't think that it was that bad. But as we learned over the coming days, it was a little bit worse than we had anticipated. The unique part about it is he was able to easy run with it. That didn't really bother him. But as soon as he would get into lifting his knee up and applying force to the ground as if he was sprinting, which he would have to do in the 1500, it really, it just wasn't working. And I mean, he has an incredible future ahead of him. And, I always want to see our guys do well and from a performance standpoint, but I also want to look out for their best interests of their health and their long-term careers. And, he's a guy that is going to go pro after this year. And so we wanted to just, I at the end of the day, I just said, hey, the ball's in your court on this decision. I'm not going to force you to do anything that you're not capable of doing or that you can further hurt yourself with, and, we made it till the warm-up track. He warmed up an hour before the race, started trying to do strides, and, just couldn't do it. And so he kind of pulled the plug there. And I think that was one of the certainly harder decisions he's probably had to make in his life. And, the hard part for me was watching, him take some shit for it, across social media and things like that. But at the end of the day, my job and our program's job is to look out for the best interests of our guys and girls, and make sure that they're in a position that we're not hindering their opportunities down the road. And I think we did a really good job of that. I mean, he's on the phone with multiple pro groups right now. He's set the collegiate record since, and he's just done so many incredible things for our program that I think we owe it to him to have his best interests at heart, first and foremost, before any performance.
Coach Sparks, we had a few questions from alumni on the sprints. We really talk distance here, but we do have a good sprint crew. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about the sprint events across men and women, what you think about in terms of scholarship allocation, walk-on standards, football players? A lot of us came from the days of Rocket being on the team, Tim Brown being on. I remember getting the DMR handoff to Tim Brown. So can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the general philosophy of the sprints has changed a little bit in the last 6 months with a new sprint coach, and it's been a breath of fresh air for the entire sprint group. I think they would all tell you. So we've collapsed our pole vault multi-event hurdle group into our sprint group with Coach Duderwick, and I think you saw direct reflection upon that at the indoor conference championship, where both teams. We talked at a meeting the other day with the team that when your 4x400 team is having some success, then it's reflective upon the depth and the competitiveness of middle distance sprints, like really middle distance and sprints coming together for success. Our men's 4x4 had, I didn't go back and look, but I think it was maybe our best finish in ACC conference history, because Coach Carlson will tell you the first year in the ACC, we had a really good 4x4, but they dropped the baton. And since then, we haven't had much going on in the men's 4x4. So we were fifth in the 4x4 there, and our women scored, ran the best time I think we've run 5 or 6 years, 3:42, to score a point in that event as well. The neat thing about Coach Z is what he goes by, Coach Z's group right now, if you follow that group closely, is the women's multis. And you'll see that on display next week at the NCAA meet. Jaden O'Brien was fourth place in the NCAA championship as an 18-year-old freshman. Which in a women's multi-event, it typically takes a couple years to kind of figure some things out. And she's primed and ready to compete with anybody at this point. A year ago, she went to the national meet a little bit intimidated and scared. Just to give you an idea of what she does, she ran 52.5 on our women's distance medley relay when we qualified for nationals, which had she not run, we wouldn't have qualified. You know, she would traditionally, Notre Dame has a great 800 and 1200 and mile leg, which we did, but the 400 is what kind of solidified us to be in the NCAA championship. And you know, Jaden's a 20-foot long jumper. She can run 52 for the 400. She's arguably our best 800-meter runner. If we put her in an 800-meter race with our girls, two girls that run 206, she'll run 206 right next to them. And she's our second best shot putter. And she's 19 years old. So keep an eye on her for the next couple of years. Coach C's doing a great job with her. But really the general philosophy in recruiting in general, but even within the sprint group, is we start this time of year looking at the junior class, and every event group is empowered to come to the table with the best recruit you can find that we can get admitted into school. And I think most everybody here on this call is a Notre Dame grad or knows what the Notre Dame admission standards are. And I would say 9 out of the 10 top women in the country are Notre Dame admissible. Probably 7 of the top 10 men, 6 or 7 of the top 10 men are admissible. And then maybe 5 of the top 10 throwers. And then in the sprint group, it's maybe 1 of the top 10 sprinters have grades that could get admitted to Notre Dame. So it's a harder recruitment process there. I'm sure if we had Coach Freeman on here with football, the power events are where the power positions, or the speed positions, I should say, the speed positions are where they struggle with wide receivers and safeties and defensive backs. Same area we struggle with the 1 and 2, but we have found that we can find some 400-meter runners that can assist on the DMR and help us score some points in the 4x400 conference. So that's, as we've transitioned this new coaching philosophy, that's how we put a more of a focus on, all right, maybe we can't find 100, 200-meter kids that we can get admitted to school that are NCAA championship worthy or scholarship worthy, but we can find some 400-meter kids that can get in and contribute to the success of the relays. And hopefully we can start pushing more towards 53-second 400 meters for the women and 46, 47 for the men, which is going to put them in positions to score at the conference meet in the 400. And then we'll maybe work our way down into some of the more shorter sprint events.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned Jaden. What she's done in her short time at Notre Dame has been super impressive. Can you talk a little bit, both of you, about who you look to for mentors as coaches? How do you look at developing your own personal coaching philosophy and relationships through mentors?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I hate to think I'm 25 years I've been doing this. So more recently, it's who I feel like a lot of times you oftentimes look at who you're competing against, and we travel. We were at the ACC meet for 4 or 5 days. We'll be at the regional or the national meet for 4 or 5 days. And who do you find yourself standing next to? And just talking about training and racing and what their kids are doing versus what your kids are doing. The guy over the last 7 or 8 years that I've spent more time, he gives me more anxiety than anything, but also gives me a lot to think about. He actually called me as we were on this Zoom. It's Mike McGuire at Michigan. I see what he does with this group, and he really excels in the middle distance area, something that I'm always trying to do better in. We've had a lot of success in the 5 and 10, but the 8 and 15. So I like to pick his brain. But honestly, we go to lunch with Coach, and Carlson will say the same name. I'll steal this one from him. Coach Piane is a guy we have lunch with probably once a month, and I think he's learning how track has changed in the last 8 years, and we're learning what some of the things he did 20 years ago when he's coaching some of the elite people that came through here before Sean and I were here. So it's I think we both enjoy each other's company as the sport's changed over the years. It doesn't mean it's all for the better that we're doing now. So it's nice to hear some of the things that went on, when he was at his prime with some of you guys. And then my other mentor that I ran for was Sam Bell, coached at Indiana University. He was there from 76 to 98, I believe, or maybe 74 to 98. Coached Bob Kennedy and Jim Spivey and some of those guys. So I got to run for him and then coach with him for a couple of years. Those are probably, and then not to get corny, but my dad was a high school basketball coach for 30 years in Indiana. So kind of when I got into the sport of coaching, I grew up in a hardcore basketball program. The head coach of my high school was not my dad. My dad was the assistant, but the head coach was more of a Bob Knight personality and a very disciplined program. And in my mind, I thought if I could have an organization or a structure to a college running program similar to what my high school basketball program was, I think at the collegiate level and at the high school level in the 80s and 90s, maybe there wasn't a lot of direction at times. So putting more structure and thought behind some of the things we did at the high school basketball level into the sport of running. And I think that's helped from what my father and the basketball background kind of instilled in me.
Thanks, Matt. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, I think probably from a philosophical standpoint, my college coach, Al Carius, who's got, I'm not even sure how many national titles he's coached over the years, but from an overall philosophy of how to treat people and how to run a program and the culture of a program, most of my stuff is definitely taken from him. I think that's one of the things that has really made us elite is the culture that we've tried to instill in our guys, and basically just being the best versions of ourselves, every day. And probably more recently, maybe from more of an X's and O's standpoint, I talk with Jerry quite a bit, the Barman coach. And there's a lot of new things happening right now in distance running, in terms of maybe the structure of weeks and how some of the volumes that people are doing, and trying to figure out how I apply that to a college setting, but then also a college setting that is academically challenging. We don't have maybe some of the same advantages that our competitor in Northern Arizona in cross country has. If they live at altitude, they take all online classes, and they basically live the lifestyle of a professional distance team. And we don't have altitude, and school is very difficult. And so how do we apply some of these kind of new training philosophies, within a setting that will work for us? And so it's been continuing to evolve over time, and I think that's why we've hopefully been continuing to get better and better each year. Is I think we're finding out that niche of how to balance it all, and once I figure that out, I'm sure it'll all change again.
I got a good question from Jess Harris. Is there a moment that you can point to this year between an athlete and a coach that you would want to highlight in terms of a special relationship or moment or something that may have happened? It's a tough one. So
I've got one pretty cool story that I think speaks a lot to the type of kids that we have here at Notre Dame and within our program. Yard Nagoose and Sam Bowles both came back here as graduate students this year, and we didn't have enough money to really get anybody besides them, from a grad school student type thing, scholarship wise. And this year, Masvello, he's an 800-meter runner that they both grew to know within the conference. Was interested in coming here for grad school and basically coming here to run. But we didn't have any money for him. Sam and Yared both gave up some of their athletic scholarship to ensure that we got him. And I think that it speaks a lot to the type of kids we have, and that they value our team's performance over any individual performance, even if it's at a financial sacrifice to themselves. And I just think, we've been really fortunate to have just some incredibly selfless kids.
Jess Harris is always trying to go for the emotional, trying to draw a tear out of somebody's eye. If you know her, she likes to share her emotions. But I'll talk about Jackie Gaughan. Those of you who followed the program the last 4 years might have forgotten that she was here until here, just maybe even this past weekend. But Jackie ran 15:52 as a freshman. She actually was the top fastest freshman in the country indoor for 5K. And in outdoor, she qualified for the outdoor nationals in the 10K. And then she did not run a race for 2 years. And I won't get into all the things that went on there, but we'll just say there were some really dark days for her and Coach Sparks as well, trying to let her find herself without forcing her to, to be overly uncomfortable. And here we are 3 years later. She's a senior. She's got a great job moving back to the Boston area. She'd never scored at the indoor conference meet before, and she scored. She was 6th this past weekend in the 5K. She ran 16:02 a couple weeks ago to Iowa State, which I think if she in the race to the 5K again, she'd run as fast as she did her freshman year. But more importantly is if you sit and have a conversation with Jackie as a freshman, Coach Carlson would probably attest, it was hard to get her to put together 2 or 3 sentences with an adult. And I called Jackie on the phone last night to talk about her workout, and she talked for 25 minutes. I couldn't get off the phone with her. It's just to see the way these kids grow up. Sean talked about the 5th year seniors, the graduate students that he's got now, and their perspective on life. And now Jackie's not only running fast, but she's mentoring. We've got a few young girls on our team now that have similar issues and struggles that Jackie had as a freshman, sophomore. So she's helping mentor them through those difficult times. So just seeing how people grow up during the 4 years, and how obviously traditionally we hope it translates to being faster as an athlete, but it's just cool to hear her talk about the job opportunities that she had, where I'm thinking 2 or 3 years ago, this girl's probably going to get a degree, and I can't imagine her in an interview. And now she's going into the financial world and gonna do big things.
That's great stories. I'll switch a little bit from the touching stories to more if you had unlimited budget, what would you spend it on?
Oh, that's right up Carlson's alley. I'll let him do.
Okay, well, here we go. One of the things that makes being competitive difficult in South Bend is we have extremely difficult winters. And for those of you guys who've been here, we don't throw salt in South Bend. So it means all the roads are, really unrunnable outside of campus. And we are fortunate that we have, our indoor track, which is great for workout days. But the difficult thing for us sometimes has been when you're doing 18 miles, your long run on a Saturday, and you've got to bounce around from the dorm treadmill to Duncan Student Center because you got kicked off there, or Duncan Student Center is closed. And sometimes we have a little bit gaps in our training just because of us having to get so creative with the weather and what we're able to doing. But if I had an unlimited budget, I would add a wing onto our outdoor track where we had multiple woodways that we can get multiple guys or girls running on at the same time, and other aerobic equipment. So whether that be spin cycles and things like that. But right now we've got some Alter Gs, which are an incredible asset to our program, but we don't have currently enough room to have any more equipment in that part of the building. And so I would say the most impactful thing in my current mind would be that kind of a wing where we could get some more treadmills and things like that in to kind of have more consistent training during the winter.
Yeah, if you think of it as your hotel fitness room kind of on steroids, maybe not as much though, maybe not all the weight and some of that activities, but like just all the cross training and woodway treadmills, ellipticals, bikes. Right now we've got, I think Joe Mendelson might be on here right now, who's been generous to help us stock that room with the Alter Gs and the woodways. But we just ran out of space at this point in that building that's pretty new, but hindsight, we'd like to have made that room a little bit larger.
That's good. That's very, very direct. Like it. And I especially this winter seemed like a harder winter in South Bend than the last couple. Hey, one of the things also I've heard from actually parents, alumni, and athletes, they love the newsletters that Cody sent out. And I know Cody has taken a new role. What's the plan for backfilling Cody? And is there a plan to get the newsletters going again?
Yeah, if we've got a computer guy or somebody that we lost 1,500 email addresses when Cody's email shut down. So if somebody knows how to retrieve those, we've hired a new director of operations, so we'll resurrect the newsletter. But somebody's going to have to spend 2 or 3 days collecting email addresses again. But yeah, Cody did a great job from networking with the alums and building relationships. And our new operations person will start here in the next week. Dave Beecham, we stole him from Florida State. He's not going to be Cody's personality. Nobody's going to be Cody's engaging personality. If you've met him in person, obviously you know what I'm talking about. Dave's the master of logistics, and he's a head track coach for 15 to 20 years. So he's going to really, selfishly, I hired him to be a second mind for me as far as thinking head coach like, because I oftentimes end up wrapped up in coaching the girls to run faster, and sometimes some head coaching things slip through the box a little bit, and it'll be nice to have a mind in there that will help remind me that, hey, the reunion's happening the 16th and 17th. We need to start planning for that. And I think you guys would all probably rather me coach the women to try to get a trophy than make sure we had salmon at the dinner on the 16th. And so that's what a good operations person will help pull all that stuff together for you, to put some pressure on Dave now so that we're ready for the reunion here in 6 months. But yeah, we're going to resurrect that a little bit. I do feel bad because there were a lot of good things that happened this winter that our sports information office is short-staffed, and we're encouraged to write our own releases if we're going to put something on the website and do our own social media. So the younger people on our staff are good with Instagram and okay with Twitter. I'm old enough to be more of a Facebook guy, so we need to try to keep that stuff up to date. And we need to get the newsletter going, because I think the newsletter kind of transcends all age groups, because we do like to keep our top 10 list on there and send some text messages. We've erased some school records this year and or knocked some people off the top 10 list. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. I think Coyle's on here somewhere, maybe listening to. We're gonna get Ron off the list here in a couple years somewhere. We're working on that 10K. I don't know where he falls on the list right now, but Sean's already, you heard him talking about he's going to put a bunch of 10 to 28-minute guys on there. So I don't know if that's how far that's going to push Ron off the list. Sean, I saw Sean pull the paperwork out right now.
Well,
Yeah.
you put, I think, an indoor 5K. I think you kind of went top 3 or 4 this year. Did 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, that was school record. It was kind of, and we felt, I guess maybe awkward's a good word for it. Like Ryan Shea had the school record for 5K, and I think a lot of us know who Ryan Shea was and what he went on to do and the legacy he left behind here and professionally, and passed away kind of in the prime of his professional running career. And yeah, we just wanted to do, there's just no good way, his record was broken by 3 guys, and trying to honor him in a proper way through that process, it just was couldn't think of a good way to do it. But obviously he's a really special person as far as Notre Dame legacy goes.
I think he'd be happy that record is broken by 3 guys. So
yeah,
it was impressive races.
Sean, you find him on the list? Where's Ron on the 10K list?
I've got the indoor list here. I'll have to pull up my 10K list.
I've got, I know I've got a bet with Jake Renfrey how quick he can bump O'Connor down on the 5K list outdoors. So I'd like to see him do that one. Anything final? We're wrapping up here. We just got a minute left. Anything I didn't get to, or you guys wanted to cover, or any final comments?
Yeah, we got the national meet next week, and we got Yard's going to be in the DMR, hopefully bring another title in there, but then he's going to come back the next day in the 3K. Dylan's going to compete in the 5K, as Sean mentioned, with one of the top seeds there, battling with the Florida State and some other sub 1320 guys. The one female we didn't bring up is Rachel Tanzos in the weight throw. She was NCAA runner-up last year. Obviously returning. She's been a little bit off her game this year. She's still seeded somewhere 6th to 8th going into the national meet. It's an event that anything can happen. So national ranked right now, the men's team's 10th, the women's are 14th. It'd be kind of neat, I think, if both teams could finish in the top 10. We need a healthy DMR anchor leg. If Ron can help pull Olivia together, holding her together a little bit right now. She's got some aches and pains, but they're seeded 9th, I think, going into the meet. Jaden is in the top 4 in her event, and then Rachel's in a, like I said, 6th to 8th to score there. So if the women can all perform kind of north the top end of what they've previously done, I think we can slide into that top 10 if we do well. But realistically, probably top 15 or 16 is where we're shooting for on that side. The men, if they can all perform as we'd like to think. They're hopefully a top 4 finish. If we can get to, what is it, 30 points, 30 to 35, then, you know, the unique nature of our sport, we're not controlling what other teams do, but if we score our points, if we score 32, that might be a trophy, or it might be 6th or 7th. But I know Carlson's looked at that pretty closely.
Good. Well, it'll be fun to watch next weekend. You got a lot of good entries. I remember the days in the 80s when we'd actually have no one going to the indoor national meet some years. So it's nice to see you have 12 or 13 people heading down there. So, well, thanks for the time. Thank you for everyone tuning in. Really.
Yeah, Ron, thanks for moderating.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good day, everybody.